And gentlemen, boys and girls, at this time I would invite you all to please rise for the presentation of the colors to be given by Girl Scouts from Troop 472, Catherine Brown, Jean Green, Shayla Kimmel, Meredith Cummings, Laura Longoria, Stacy Hooker, and Sandra Carr. I would invite you to remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we will have America sung by the Ed Cody Choir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Boulevard dismissed.
On behalf of the Northside School District and all of us here at Ed Cody Elementary School, I want to formally welcome you all to the dedication of Ed Cody Elementary. I'd like to introduce a few people at this time. First of all, I'd like to introduce our guest of honor, Mr. Ed Cody. If you'd rise. you remain standing? I'd like to introduce the rest of his family. His wife, Cody. And their 3 children, Lynn, Tom, and Carl Cody. Mr. Cody's tenure as superintendent of Northside, 17 years, and the extraordinary skill with which he did the job contributed significantly to making Northside the fine school system that it is today. There are others here tonight to honor him, and these others are the first people he would give credit to for setting the precedent for excellence, which he continued. I'd like to introduce at this time 2 very special individuals, and I would ask that you hold your applause until we recognize the 2 of them, so we can recognize the 2 of them at one time. Mr. Murray Boone is with us tonight, superintendent of Northside, who originally hired Ed Cody to teach here. Mr. Boone, would you rise? We also have Mr. Carlos Kuhn, president of the board for 15 of Northside's early years. Mr. Kuhn. Our schools, ladies and gentlemen, are built under the direction of elected school board members who presently are serving on the Northside School District Board of Education. I would like to introduce a group of them, and I would ask that you please hold your applause until we can introduce them all and then recognize them as a group. We have with us tonight Mr. Raul B. Fernandez, elected to place 6 in 1972 and board president, an engineer and senior vice president for Upmore and Associates Incorporated. Mr. Fernandez and his wife Sylvia have 3 children. I'd also like to introduce Mr. Sam C. Godfrey, who was elected to place 5 in 1980 and is board vice president. Mr. Godfrey is director of operations for the San Antonio office of Gelco Corporation and a private investments manager. Mr. Godfrey and his wife Betty have 2 children. Also with us tonight we have Mrs. Virginia A. Myers, who was elected to place 3 in 1981 and is board secretary, a longtime active President-Teacher Association leader. Mrs. Myers and her husband, O.E., have 3 children. Mr. William J. Thornton is also with us. He was elected to place 4 in 1968, a deputy director of manpower and organization, Electronic Security Command at Kelly Air Force Base. Mr. Thornton and his wife Louise have 4 children. Mr. L. Charles Neely Jr. is also with us tonight. He was elected to place 7 in 1981. He is owner of San Antonio Steel Company. Mr. Neely and his wife Tricia have 3 children. And we also have trustee Harry G. Cunningham, who was elected to place 2 in 1982. An operations manager for Sears Roebuck and Company, Mr. Cunningham and his wife Barbara have 3 children. Could we have a round of applause for these board members? For direction in planning a school building with all the necessary instructional facilities, the board looks to Northside administrators for wisdom and guidance. It is with advice from the educators who are the administration that the board implements the building plan for the Northside School District. At this time I would like to again introduce a group of administrators, and if we could recognize them at the end of the list by a round of applause. I would like to introduce first of all our superintendent, Mr. Jack Jordan, our deputy superintendent, Dr. Warren Alexander, our associate superintendent for instruction, Mr. Ed Rollinson, Director of Elementary Education, Mr. Monroe May. Associate Superintendent for Personnel, Mr. Carlos Ortiz. Associate Superintendent for Business, Mr. Gordon Meckler. And Associate Superintendent for Facilities, Mr. Terry McGuire. Could we have a round of applause for these individuals? The last Associate Superintendent that I introduced to you in this list was Mr. Terry McGuire. Mr. McGuire is in charge of facilities. He works with school-appointed architects to design the school and follow construction plans through to completion. He is the one who is primarily charged with the duty of seeing that a school is completed, and our thanks and congratulations for this beautiful school also go to the architects and contractors. I would like you to, at this time, meet some of the people or some of the companies that were responsible for the construction of Ed Cody Elementary. Again, I'd like to introduce the group and then recognize them with a round of applause. We have with us Mr. Von Baumberger from the architectural firm of Phelps and Simmons and Garza. Please also welcome Mr. Calvin Coulterman, owner, Covert Coulterman Contractors Incorporated. Mr. Coulterman. From the mechanical engineering firm for Ed Cody Elementary, please welcome Paul G. Silber, Jr. Mr. Silber. Now from the structural and engineering firm of Reynolds, Schladner, Cheddar and Associates Incorporated, please welcome Mr. Dick Cheddar. Could we have a round of applause for all of these individuals? In the operation of any school, there are several groups which must be working together and must be operating as a unit in order to have a successful school program. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mrs. Mariana Aguirre from the PTA Council and our local PTA President, Mrs. Norma Cook. Could we have a round of applause for those ladies? The PTA is, of course, one of the organizations or one of the units in the operation of the school that is very important. I would now like to introduce the people who actually work here at Ed Cody Elementary School. I would like for them to rise a group at a time, and then I'd like to have a round of applause for them. Ordinarily, I would say that when you think of a school, the first group of people, well, maybe not the first group, maybe the first group is children. The second group would be the teachers. At this time, I'd like to have all of the faculty, certified personnel, secretaries and aide from Ed Cody Elementary rise, please. That's one group that works at Ed Cody Elementary. Thank you all very much. Napoleon once said that an army travels on its stomach. By that, he meant that an army must be fed. We don't quite have an army here at Ed Cody Elementary, but we do have quite a few children, and they must be fed. And at this point, I'd like to recognize the cafeteria ladies from Ed Cody Elementary School. If there are any in the audience, would you all please rise? We'll give them a round of applause anyway. All of these groups work very diligently at Ed Cody, but there's one more group that needs to be recognized. And this group is responsible for keeping the school clean, and it is through their efforts that we were able to get the school ready tonight for this dedication program. If any of the Ed Cody custodians are in the audience, would you all please rise? At this point, I would like to turn the program over to the children from the Promise program here at Ed Cody, who will present a program for your enjoyment. Jeff, would you take it away, please?
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this dedication program. This time we would like to spotlight the high points of Mr. Cody's career. Mr. Cody, this is your life. Ed Cody began his long association with schools the way everybody else does. However, he did have some unusual experiences and accomplishments as he was growing up. Between 6 and 8 years of age, young Eddie had a pet billy goat which was very fond of him. The goat wanted to go everywhere that Eddie went, even to church.
Eddie had a little goat, little goat. Eddie had a little goat, his fur was white as snow. Everywhere that Eddie went, Eddie went, Eddie went. Everywhere that Eddie went, his goat was sure to go. It followed him to church one day, church one day, church one day. Followed him to church one day, it was against the rule. It made the children laugh and say, laugh and say, laugh and say. Made the children laugh and say, that isn't very cool.
Not so different from having 4,000 employees and 35,000 students follow you around, is it, Mr. Cody? Fishing has always been a major pastime for Mr. Cody. He fondly remembers his early successful fishing trip to Woodlawn Lake, and he now goes fishing at Falcon Lake. At the age of 10, Mr. Cody and some friends embarked on a magazine sales enterprise, pursuing happiness by selling Life and Liberty magazines. After Mr. Cody graduated from college, he worked as a junior high coach, a banker, a teacher, a principal, an assistant superintendent, and a superintendent. On the last day of school in 1953, while he was principal at Helotes, an important event in his life took place. He married Carl to Jean Myers, dutifully promising to love, honor, and remember her birthday. Church is still an important part of his life, and so is remembering her birthday. Cody has had many friends. Walter Bilstein and Mr. Cody have been friends since they were boys.
As a football player, he was a good kid and worked hard, but he wasn't a star. These are the words of Ed Cody's coach, Jimmy Cunningham, at Horace Mann Junior School in the 8th grade. Ed has spent his elementary years at Woodlawn Elementary School and 1 semester at Mark Twain Junior School. In the spring of 1937, along with several hundred other people, including me, Ed helped open Horace Mann Junior School. Here he began many friendships, many of which exist to this day. He was all boy, participated in most sports, and was well liked by both boys and girls. In junior school, for athletic teams, football teams, boys were classified by weight, age, and grade. Ed, light in weight, and a year younger than most of his classmates, was a 90-pound guard on the B team. Ed and I, neither one were ever able to make the A team. His competitive nature, which still exists today, allowed him to compete favorably with others and even compelled him to attempt to play at Jefferson the next year. Incidentally, that didn't last very long. He was remembered by most as a very likable boy, a good friend, an average student doing what was necessary in the classroom to get by, well known and well liked, and enjoyed a good time. Along with all of this, his coach also said, it is probably safe to say he was paddled at least once. Over the years, friends who first knew him as a companion in sports, the classroom, and some mischievous episodes have developed admiration and respect throughout his career. Even in those formative years, those who knew him best could see such characteristics as a sense of loyalty to friends and institutions, concern for those about him, moral convictions which showed through even during times of typical boyhood mischief, an interest in the world in which he lived, and even at an early age, a sense of commitment to God which was manifested in his attendance at the First Baptist Church Sunday School and BYPU. For those of you who don't know, that's the Baptist Young People's Union. Yes, to those who really knew Ed Cody at an early age, his success as an educator and humanitarian comes as no surprise, and I appreciate the opportunity to salute Ed Cody tonight.
Ed Rawlinson and Mr. Cody have worked together in Northside's main office. Do you have any memories of him, Mr. Rawlinson?
I've worked with Mr. Cody since 1971, and like many other employees of the school district, I feel that during that time I've progressed from the employee category into the friend category, and so delighted to be here tonight to say a few things about my friend Ed Cody. Many of you boys and girls have heard the story of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Dr. Jekyll was a medical doctor who like most doctors, served people and did many good things. At times, he changed into Mr. Hyde, who was a werewolf and not a very nice person. Now, we all know that there's no such things as werewolves and that it's a make-believe story. But the parents and the other adults here tonight are aware of some true stories where, for one reason or another, people's personalities change. They act one way for a while, maybe most of the time, then for a few days they fall into another routine and reflect a totally different personality. I'd like to confirm to you tonight that Mr. Cody is definitely one of these multiple personality types. Now, some of the characters that he reflects are very well known to you and to the public in general. One of these that's easy to recognize is the politician. I remember many times, really, that Mr. Cody would go into meetings with parent groups or other groups that were unhappy about something, and I really thought he'd be lucky to come out alive. But by the end of the meeting, everything was resolved, and the people were happy and just like members of a family. So I know at least once I told him that you should have been a politician. And he said, "Rawlinson, I am a politician." So at the time, it really didn't sound too abnormal. However, on another occasion, I heard him talk to the Board of Trustees about a legal issue, and he quoted the law at length, and he sounded exactly like he'd been to Harvard Law School. And I recall telling him after the meeting that he should have been a lawyer. And he said, "Rawlinson, I am a lawyer." And something about the way that he said it really kind of made me feel uneasy. Like he believed it, perhaps. Another well-known personality or character that Mr. Cody reflects is that of the deacon. You've heard some other evidence that he's very active in his church. Sometimes, though, I think he might get a little carried away with that role, because there will be 2 or 3 days at a stretch, or there have been 2 or 3 days at a stretch, that he will go around calling me Brother Rawlinson, or talk to Mr. Jordan as Brother Jordan, and suggest that we go down to Jim's coffee shop and break bread together. So it's like he carries it a little too far. Still another character that would be easy for you to recognize is the good old boy type. The characteristics you're familiar with. Someone who's easy to talk to and easy to laugh with, easy to relate to. There is another characteristic of good old boys, and that is that they usually like to drink a lot of beer. Now, I've never known Mr. Cody to drink beer, and it may be due to that deacon aspect of his personality, but when he gets into this role of the good old boy, I have noticed a few times that he hitches his belt up an extra notch or two, perhaps to give the image that he does a lot of beer drinking. One other personality to mention is that you may have noticed if you've ever ridden with Mr. Cody on the expressway is what I call his Indy 500 personality. Whenever he gets in this personality, well, he hunches down in the seat a little bit, and he revs the motor and mumbles something about refueling times, and drives like he's a lap or two behind. There's one last character role that I've seen Mr. Cody assume, and I may be the only person who has seen him assume this role. And before I share this with you, I need to give you 2 pieces of background information. One is that our Board of Trustees meets on Monday nights, twice a month. The second thing is that we now have 3 board members who are Aggies. And I'm not talking about casual Aggies, but dyed-in-the-wool Aggies. And while they normally have a great sense of humor and very gracious individuals, they tend to be somewhat sensitive about Aggie jokes. And the next role, or the character I've seen Mr. Cody reflect, is that of a comedian, and one who specializes in Aggie jokes. He has a secret compulsion to tell Aggie jokes. And of course, he could not have remained superintendent as long as he did if this had gotten out to the Board of Trustees. So for any number of years now, he has called me down to his office on Monday afternoon and told me Aggie joke after Aggie joke until he got him out of his system. So that he would have no compulsion to tell him Monday night at the board meeting. Although Mr. Cody's been very successful in keeping that a secret, it did contribute directly to his decision to retire. You may feel that he retired so that he could go fishing or play golf or write his memoirs, but the truth of the matter is that he felt that he needed much more time to write the world's most extensive collection of Aggie jokes. Well, I'm sure tonight that you realize that I've stretched the truth a little bit. Not too much, but a little bit. However, the very first thing that I said was the absolute truth, and that is that I, like many people who worked in the school district, have progressed over the years from the employee category to the friend category. And I want to congratulate you, Mr. Cody, tonight on the honor of having the school named for you, and I also want to congratulate the boys and girls and the teachers of the school on the honor that they're receiving too.
Bonnie Ellison has followed Mr. Cody around with her ever-ready camera for several years. Do you have any special memories of him, Mrs. Ellison?
Certainly, Mr. Cody is doing something tonight he's never done before. He's sitting still. I worked for the man for 10 years, and this is the first time I've seen him stay in one place for so long. By capturing him, we can let some of his energy and restlessness to get on with the business of education rub off on an entire school. Don't ever agree to go to lunch with a man unless you like fast food places. Or if you just as soon bring your sack lunch back to the office and talk about school while you eat your sandwich. He loves ice cream, by the way. But he would never give his a chance to melt so he could stir it like the rest of us did. His doctor always wanted him to exercise. His doctor was mistaken, though, because he thought being a superintendent of schools was a desk job. The doctor never measured how many miles Mr. Cody walked, visiting schools and just thinking on his feet. People in the office used to think that Mr. Cody was checking up on them because he walked and paced back and forth in front of their desks all the time. He was rarely checking on them. He was thinking. He was walking mile after mile after mile and thinking which principal would be the perfect principal for an elementary school like this one, which instructional program would be the perfect one, which ways we could build schools and keep costs to the people reasonable, or which one thing would help one student get as excited about learning as he was. No one knew really how fast he could move until the phone rang. Mr. Cody believes that when people call on the telephone, it's because they want to talk about school and they don't want to wait a second. No matter whose desk he was passing, he would pick it up and answer it. Whoever wanted to talk about school, he'd talk, but he didn't really talk. He taught about school, especially to news reporters who wanted an educator who was willing to say something daring and something honest. They always called Mr. Cody because they knew he wouldn't beat around the bush. When he left the district this summer, Mr. Cody said, "Be good," and he started to say, "and stay out of trouble." But he grinned, and instead he said, "I know you're not going to stay out of trouble." Because people who are good sometimes run into trouble with people who aren't so good. This courage to wade into dissent in the interest of doing what's right for young people is the legacy Mr. Cody leaves to Northside. This enthusiasm for energetically pursuing what's right for education is the spirit he instills in Ed Cody Elementary School. Congratulations.
Mr. Cody turned the reins over to Jack Jordan in July 1982. Surely you have some really great memories of him, Mr. Jordan.
And stay out of trouble. I don't know who you meant that for, Ed. It's good to see Mr. Cody and his family, his mother here tonight, because it ties in with the rather brief and serious remark that I have to make. Besides our very close professional relationship, Ed Cody and I have been friends for many years. We have agreed and we have disagreed. And through that time, we've shared a very close working partnership. He as superintendent and I as deputy superintendent for some 13 years. I think the prominent quality that comes to my mind when I think of Ed Cody is his caring attitude toward others. It's best illustrated by a story that his secretary told me of a happening some Christmas time a few years ago. A woman came into Mr. Cody's office deeply upset because someone from the attendance office at one of our high schools had called her house about the absence of her daughter. She felt that she, as a parent, was being checked on, and basically she was. But the lady hadn't understood the reason. Mr. Cody, ever the teacher, met with her for a short period of time, and she left the office with a great understanding of the desire for improved communication on student absences between the home and school. The next week, the same lady appeared in Ed Cody's office. She needed a friend and immediately turned to someone she had sensed as a sincere person and a true friend. She told Mr. Cody that she had no money and no food in her house, and she had no idea where she was going to go and what she was going to do. She thought perhaps Mr. Cody could direct her to some source of help. He told her, as he has done many people, that he'd do some checking and call her back. After she left the office, he gave his secretary, Mrs. Taylor, some money and asked her to go to a local grocery store, buy some groceries, and deliver them to the lady's house. He then followed through with his promise to put her in touch with the social services agency. That's the kind of man that I worked with for 22 years, and that's the kind of man that this school is going to be very honored to carry his name, Ed Cody.
Mr. Cody, because this has been a very special occasion for Ed Cody Elementary School, I would like to present you with a certificate stating that you have been our honoree for the evening.
At this point, we'd like to have the dedication address by the President of the School Board, Mr. Raul B. Fernandez.
Dedication address.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ascendis. It is my pleasure to bring you greetings from the Board of Trustees of the Northside Independent School District, especially at this kind of an occasion. And I've heard some things here tonight that I've never heard before. I've never heard Ed Cody tell an Aggie joke. That, I can assure you that. And there was a time we had 4 Aggies on our board, and Ed survived, but I'm not sure he could survive today after all I've heard. We've had some outstanding board members, and one I'd like to recognize tonight, who was a past president of our school board, Jimmy Elrod. Jimmy, would you stand up? Where are you? And I'm looking to make sure I didn't catch one that might have come in late, and I apologize if I didn't. I'd like to congratulate Mr. Ascendis and the staff of Ed Cody Elementary and the students. It's a fine performance and an act that's tough to follow. And I think you all deserve a big, big hand, and we're appreciative of what you've done. It's always exciting to dedicate a new school. And we've opened 4 this year at Northside School District. We've opened Earl Rudder Middle School, the Northwest Crossing Elementary, Bronze Station Elementary, and the ED Ed Cody Elementary. That's a lot of growth for a school district, and we are a growing school district. And we're not only here tonight to recognize progress and growth and to honor one of our own by naming this school after Ed Cody, but we have to give credit to the patrons of this school district, because the patrons of this school district have a will-do attitude. This school was built from funds out of a $48.5 million bond issue that was passed in 1981 by a 70% affirmative vote. That is something that we are very proud of in this school district, that kind of support from patrons. And we said by our vote that we want to provide the necessary facility to accommodate the growth for new areas of this school district, and we're willing to tax ourselves to do so. By the same token, we care more about what goes inside of these schools. The continued concern of the Board of Trustees is to provide for an educational environment of the first class. And our continued goal is to hire administrators who will assemble the quality staff of professionals to educate our young people. I would hope this attitude never changes, and that our willingness, that is the willingness of all the people of this community that we call Northside, that willingness to effectively communicate and to work together to solve problems and to face up to future challenges, that willingness, ladies and gentlemen, will ensure that this attitude continues. Ed, there have been many tributes paid to you since you announced your retirement, and most of them have been deserving. But I'd like to touch on a part of you that I feel has been important not only to you but to your success, and that is your family, and you really have two, your real family and your large family of friends. And these are the people whose quality makes you very special. Mrs. Carlton Jean Cody, they were all introduced earlier. I won't ask them to stand up. Superintendent's wife for 17 years. No easy task. I know there's been some highs and some lows through those years, but if there were any lows, I promise I have never seen you once show it. And I know that you're very proud of your family and of Ed's success, and we feel that you're a very special person and an artist of diverse talents who a lot of people don't know about that side of Carlton Jean Cody, but I do, and I appreciate you for what you've helped Ed do and for this school district. And Carl Cody, their eldest son, he wasn't supposed to be here tonight, and he came in as a surprise, and I'm glad he's here. Carl's the vice president of American Mortgage Company in Houston. And Carl graduated from Marshall High School and from Texas A&I, and he was active in baseball in high school, and he was active in football, and he and his wife have the two children that are the Cody grandchildren, and glad you're here, Carl. And Tom Cody, the younger son, the middle son, is the area manager of Aquamax here in San Antonio. He also graduated from Marshall and from Texas A&I. And he was active in sports, active in baseball and track and football. And I'm told that Tom was known as the Campbell Kid, okay? And this is because he was the soup son. And I'm sure you relate a lot to those memories, and I'm sure that you and Carl both got into the typical kidding of the day before the game that the central office just had a call, and you will be starting the game tomorrow. But that's part of the price you pay for being the super son. And then, Cody, you got to hurry to get to your dance team assignment. She's a senior at Clark High School, and I know it's been a challenge for you, not only to follow in Carl and Tom's footsteps, but being the super's daughter. And you're recognized for your talent, not only in the classroom, but on the dance team at Clark. And I assure you that one of the few things that I know about you is that your volunteer work in area hospitals reflects your mature and unselfish nature. And we wish you well. I wasn't going to say anything about Texas A&M, but since brought up, I'll have to tell you that, that Linda has already applied and is accepted as a freshman at Texas A&M University next semester. So, and she'll be a freshman in September. And we're glad that Mrs. Gertrude Schrader, Mr. Cody's mother, is here with us tonight, and Mrs. Schrader is a retired school teacher, so you fit right in. Ed, if one could measure family and friends and somehow assign a value, then your account would be considered full, and you are a very fortunate man. And I further believe that you honor us by allowing your name to be used to dedicate this school. And I honestly and sincerely would say that Ed Cody is a role model for every youngster who will ever attend here. In closing, I would like to announce on behalf of the Board of Trustees that at our next meeting, we will pass a resolution with all the necessary whereases and therebys to make official the following action. And that is that, effective tonight, Ed Cody will be officially recognized by title as Superintendent Emeritus of Northside Independent School District. Ed, this is a tribute to the position of respect in which you are held by this Board of Trustees and this community. And we appreciate you and your many contributions.
Thank you, Rob.
Ladies and gentlemen and students, family and friends of Ed Cody, thank you for your presence here tonight. And we hope this facility will always be a happy school where young people can learn and grow in knowledge. Thank you.
It is ironic, I think, that the order of business calls for us to present a program relative to Mr. Cody, and then we have some good friends of his discussing some of the things that they remember about him. And it is only at this point that we roll around to hearing from Mr. Ed Cody.
Thank you very much. I have all those wonderful and kind remarks, nice things. There are probably one or two of you out there that I can see that may not believe them all. You know, some of you back there in the back. You know, my cup just runs over tonight listening to these nice remarks and having my family here with me to share that, my mother and my aunts, my wife, my sons. One of them I didn't even expect. You know, it's kind of a thrill to see him walk in. Calvin, let me say, you've done a beautiful job on this school. You and I built a lot of schools together. You did all the work and I did all the hassling, but you did a beautiful job on this school, and I congratulate you. And Vaughn, your designs, obviously, where's Vaughn? I can't spot you, Vaughn. There you are. You obviously did a very fine job of design. Your firm did, and it's a beautiful school. I congratulate you. By the way, Vaughn's wife teaches at John Marshall High School, so we kept it right here in the family for us this year. You know, I don't know how to respond to all these nice things. Walter Bilstein takes time, my old buddy for many, many years, takes time. He's the new president of the Chamber of Commerce. We congratulate you, Walter. That's just grand. You know, it takes time to come and be here with us tonight. It's really a joy for me. All my friends that participated, even Ed Rawlinson's remarks. And Jack, how do you respond to these things? There isn't any way I can respond. I can't say that words are inadequate. I will say that my use of words is inadequate, probably. I'm touched very deeply. You know, there's not a higher honor that can come to a man that's spent his life in education than to have a school named after him. Where do you go from there? You know, that's the highest honor that can come to you. And I'm just so deeply moved, and I'm so deeply appreciative. The Board of Trustees, when they did this, I had no knowledge of it, and they did it in secret, and They may have done some other things in secret I didn't know about. You know? If they did that, they could have done something else I didn't know about. I just thought about it. But I'm very grateful. The honor is just overwhelming. There are two things that I want to say about the honor. The fact that it's an effort on the trustees' part to recognize me, I appreciate. But it does, you know, put a burden on you, doesn't it? I've got to always live in such a way that my life will continue to be a credit to Northside School District, and certainly never do anything to discredit this very, very nice school and all that it stands for, and all the responsibility it stands for that's been bestowed on me. So that's a responsibility I readily accept and will fulfill to the best of my ability. And then it prompts me to say something else. I was kidding the trustees. All these nice things that were said about me, I could say the same things about my predecessor, Murray Boone, outstanding educator, outstanding man in every respect, did so much for me in helping me grow and go into the job. But folks, you in Northside School District, you that live here, make your home here, support the schools that Raul was talking about in the manner in which you do, you're fortunate to have a board of trustees that has the courage to do the things that they do, to stand for what they stand for. And if I step away from the scene and step down, there are two things that I'm really grateful for, is that we have that kind of trustees in this school district, and I hope and pray that we'll always have that kind of trustee. And I would charge you to see that that kind of courage, honesty, and forthrightness is always that central office in the form of a trustee. And secondly, it's such a gratifying feeling. Yeah, I've spent over 25, almost 29 years, almost 30 years here in Northside School District. And you know, after that period of time, you commit a whole lot of your life. I'm a little over 30, but you know, I spent a lot of my life tied up here. And you don't just walk away from it without having a lot of concern about what's happening and what's going to happen. I'm really grateful for the fact that Jack Jordan is superintendent of schools here in Northside. You couldn't find a finer man anywhere to run the public schools of this district. And I'm just grateful that the trustees did place Jack in that position and have given him the opportunity. I have every confidence in him. He's the kind of leader that this school district needs, and you're lucky to have. Thank you very much for a glorious program. Very nice of you, Raul. All of you trustees, thank all of you very much.
At this point in the program, I would like to reintroduce Mrs. Norma Cook, our PTA president, who has some presentations to make to Mr. Cody.
Mr. Cody, I would like to present to you a framed copy of the program of tonight and an extended welcome to visit the school at any time.
Thank you, Miss Cook. Look at that.
Now, I understand that when Mr. Cody retired, he and his wife were presented with a quilt. And in the center of this quilt was a school named Heritage Northwest. Well, that was changed, so to add to his quilt is Ed Cody.
That's very nice. Let me tell you something. When I was presented that quilt at that tribute that night, I didn't really get to see it. You know, it was up on the wall, and there wasn't any way I could go look at it. But that thing is magnificent. You know, if you have no idea, I wish I could show it. It's in my bedroom, so you can't all see it. But it's on my bed. But I'll tell you something. That's one of the finest things. It's a square like this for every school in the district, and the transportation department, and the warehouse, and every place. It's just really first class, and I thank you very much. That's really nice.
We're not through yet.
PTA decided that Mr. Cody needs a souvenir. Being a ex-military wife, my kids collect souvenirs all the time. So we present Mr. Cody with his very first souvenir.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
Look at that. It's a t-shirt.
Not any t-shirt.
No, that's not just any t-shirt. That's first class. I thank you very, very much. I wondered, it's the Ed Cody coats. That's nice. Thank you so very much.
In just a few moments, we will have the first performance of the Ed Cody School Song by the Ed Cody Choir. And I would invite you all to sing along with us. It's the kind of tune that you can catch on to after a few bars. And the words to the song are on the second to the last page. It simply says, school song. Before we go on into the school song, which will be the final number from our choir tonight, I would like to invite all of you, when the program is over, after the school song, to go ahead and make yourselves at home, tour the school. The teachers will be in their classrooms. If you have not seen the school before, avail yourselves of this opportunity. It's a beautiful school. Northside is very, very proud of it, and I'm very proud to be associated with it. Additionally, we will have some refreshments which will be served out in the foyer. Help yourselves to those also. They are being provided by the J High School. Mrs. Jeanette Young is the coordinator for that program. And I would also invite you to shake hands with Mr. Ed Cody and see him up close, get to know him a little bit, because he's a very, very fine man. Now for the final number, we'd like to invite you all to join in for the Ed Cody School Song.
All hail to Ed Cody, it's the silver and black, long may your colors fly. Rise all you sons and you daughters too, your spirit must not die. So hail to Ed Cody and the silver and black, what carry for the rest. We will give all we got for Ed Cody School, the school that we love best. All hail to Ed Cody and the silver and black, all their colors fly. Rise all you sons and you daughters too, your spirit must not die. So hail to Ed Cody and the silver and black, what carry for the rest. We will give all we got for Ed Cody School, the school that we love best. Hey!
Thank you. Very glad.
Glad to meet you.
It's a beautiful program. Really nice, Benito. I'll tell you.
Glad you enjoyed
Very
it.
impressive, excellent.
There's so many people that came.
Sure.